Welcome to the Wellbeing Room. Today, I have with me Mish Wright. Mish is a powerhouse in the world of fitness, women's health, and education. And we had the fortune of meeting each other a couple of years ago when we were both doing contract work for a not for profit organization. Mish navigated challenges she faced as a young mum with resilience, and this journey shaped her mission to empower women through fitness. With over 2 decades of experience, Mish's focus has been guiding women on their fitness journey whilst maintaining an awareness of the importance of pelvic health. Over the years, Mish has led corporate initiatives, redesigned training programs for older adults, and developed over 30 online courses, including her signature program, Evolution. As a result, she has impacted thousands of fitness professionals across the globe who have benefited from her holistic approach to fitness education that addresses women's unique needs, debunks myths, and empowers professionals and their clients. Mish is a passionate advocate, mentor, and educator and shares her experience generously through her blog on her website. I was intrigued by one of her recent blog posts titled How I Quit Mummy Wine Time. And this led me to ask Mish to join us here today in the Wellbeing Room. Welcome, Mish.
Hello, Leah, and thank you so much. Such a glowing introduction.
Oh, yeah, well, I think you deserve it. Yeah, so I was really intrigued by your blog post. And, for me, I live in wine country. I'm in the Barossa Valley in South Australia. So it's home to some of the big names in wine. And it kind of goes without saying that I'm surrounded by drinkers. I personally
Mm,
gave up drinking a long time ago and don't have the background of having alcohol as a regular part of my life. However, I know a lot of people do, especially women who use alcohol
yeah,
as a support mechanism, i.e., mummy wine time. And that's what you
yep.
refer to in your blog. So, can you paint a picture for us of how you used to use wine and what were the alarm signals, so to speak, that led you to consider going alcohol free?
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, I didn't think that my drinking was problematic. I grew up in the 80s. I was a teenager in the 80s, and so, um, you know, stealing your parents' grog and necking it before going to a party was all pretty part and parcel. And but when I went into early adulthood, yes, I would have a drink going out. But yeah, I didn't drink every day. In fact, I was very health conscious and weight conscious, and so that dictated it. And it has been on reflection of like, how did I get from there to having a bottle of wine every night? And I've been doing it for a very long time. And and it was becoming a mum. There wasn't some um mind you, my first birth was a little bit traumatic, but do you know what I mean? Like when I think about it was upon coming a mother. And and I'm just going to speak really frankly and openly about this, is
Mm.
that when I became a mother, I didn't know who I was anymore.
Mm.
I had an experience. I used to take Millie. So I am a Kiwi. I lived in London. She was born in London, and I took her to something called Monkey Time. Which is you
Mm.
go and play games and sing
Yeah.
and dance and stuff like that when she was little.
Yeah.
And I was referred to that whole time as Millie's mum. And now, what's Millie's mum going to say? What's Millie's mum going to do? Blah, blah, blah. And I remember just walking out of there going, who the fuck am I? Like, am I just Millie's mum? Is this my lot in life? Is this how
Mm.
I'm forever going to be known? Now, I didn't tell anybody this,
Yeah.
because it's not a conversation that we have whenever we have a moan about being a mom. We always have to back it up with, oh, but I love my children.
Mm.
Oh, I really, my world wouldn't be without them. And my babies are now 21 and 23, and I've got some more older stepchildren. But um it's now, as adults, I can say this stuff and they know that I've always loved them and put them first. So I can be more open about it was tough in ways. Yes, the non-sleeping and all of that was tough,
Mm.
but that lack of identity. So, and
Mm.
part of it was my work day never finished.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have any help. And so for me, I would bath Millie, give her dinner about 5 o'clock, bath her, and pour a glass of wine when she was in the bath. And that, I used to call it a glass of coping at arsenic hour. And and it was
Yeah.
kind of that knock off, like I'm on my way to her going to bed, and then I can tidy up, not see toys everywhere, and I can reclaim a bit of me.
Mm.
And I think that I used alcohol as a crutch at the start of motherhood, and then that never really went away until I got COVID about just nearly 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it went from my symptoms, my husband and I both got it at the same time. We both had the same, you know, COVID like symptoms, you know, of headaches and etc., feeling fluey and stuff. But his went cleared up after 5 days, and mine didn't clear up till, you know, 22 months later.
Mm.
In fact, even yesterday, I had a day where I was just like, oh, actually, I keep saying, oh, I'm better. And then
Mm.
I'm reminded that actually I might never be fully the same again, but that's okay. I've learned strategies to deal with it.
Yeah.
But I was someone who never really got hangovers, so I could drink and still function.
Mm.
And people knew me as like having a drink, but very rarely. I didn't like anyone to see me out of control. I didn't like being out of control, so I managed my drinking that way.
Yeah.
But I had to stop because I was having neurological issues,
Mm.
and I didn't know whether it was from my drinking or from COVID. And I woke up every day from the day I got COVID with like a hangover. So I just, you know, it put a stop to it, and then I just have never drunk since.
Yeah.
But but I had toyed with stopping in the months prior to this because I was aware about going through menopause. Like, you've said all those things about what I do and what I know and who I am, and my secret self was not resonating,
Yeah.
and it was not authentic to what I was saying. Like, I knew the research around what wine is and what how much alcohol women can drink and metabolize, and the impacts of brain health, which are really significant. So I knew all that, and so I had attempted a couple of times to stop, but I'd never been able to manage it. And then COVID was like, okay, well, I can't drink right now because I'm feeling so shitty,
Yeah.
but I'm going to use those strategies and tools, and I'm just going to, you know, not give up for life. And I still think that I've just given up for today,
Yeah.
but I've just never had a drink since. And the more I go on, the more I think I probably won't. I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate you being really open there. I think a lot of women can relate to your story, and I really, yeah, honor you for sharing that with us today. Um, and I love how you say, you're not a non-drinker today, and it is one day at a time, really. Like, you don't want to rule out that possibility of, celebrating something, and maybe having a glass of wine, but at the moment you don't need it right now, and that's a really great accomplishment, I think, for someone who relied on it for such a long time, to find that sort of, yeah, I can get on with the rest of my day. It's, nearing that time where I can relax, and it's a coping mechanism, isn't it? Really, for want of a better term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I got into it, so one of the strategies I used to look at my drinking, so 5 o'clock was a trigger for me.
Mm.
Like 5 o'clock is like I I'm dying for a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Um, but one of the strategies was that measure the time it takes from that, oh, I'm dying for a glass of wine, till that feeling subsides. And it
Yeah.
was about between 21 and 23 minutes.
Yeah. Wow. That's very precise.
Yeah, well, I timed it because it
Yeah.
was really strong.
Yeah.
And then when I could get past it, so then I was just like, okay, well, if I can do something for 20 to 30 minutes to
Mm.
distract myself, then I've got control over this. And that was a huge coping mechanism. The other one that really helped, and a big thing that, I don't know, I think was a barrier for me to look at my drinking, was this idea of being an alcoholic.
Yes. Yeah.
So if I tell
Yeah.
people I've got a problem with drinking and I can't stop drinking, they're going to assume I'm an alcoholic. And being an alcoholic is not something I identify with or want to identify with, and now we have a much more language around that. Well, I think maybe because I've dug into this, but if this is all kind of new to your listeners, then there's something called gray area drinking.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I've never heard
So
that term. Yeah.
yeah, so gray area drinking is this kind of, that gray area between, person who has one too many on a odd occasion to, you know, to how we historically visualize alcoholics. So if I say that word to you, what does it conjure up for you, an alcoholic?
Well, and lots of different things. I guess traditionally it's the person that is, basically starts their day off with a drink or, struggles to get started without drinking. Could be someone who has a drink and their personality changes quite significantly. They become abusive or, that kind of thing. Um, Generally someone who really struggles to go about their day without any alcohol. Um, but I know also that people can mask that really well through, over the years they've practiced and learnt to hide it. So yeah, it's sometimes people don't necessarily appear as alcoholics, but that they actually are, but they've just got really good ways of masking it.
Yeah, or it could be it's the person you see on the street who
Mm.
doesn't have a home, who doesn't have a job. So an alcoholic, it can trigger something that is, 100 million miles from where
Mm.
you are. So there's
Yeah.
also disassociation. So it's not a word that I think is helpful in a
No.
lot of the
Mm.
conversations around alcohol. So when I appreciated that I didn't have to be an alcoholic or not an alcoholic,
Mm.
it's not a binary.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that is just one term and many. Then I felt like I could take the glasses off and see, or put the glasses on and see, you know, look at what behavior I was doing,
Mm.
and getting it down to, this is a behavioral response. How can I change this behavioral response?
Mm.
And yeah, it that was really helpful for me to understand, to have a different view on that word alcoholic. Mm.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and I think, there's obviously stigma and stereotypes that we turn to when we hear these terms. Yeah, and it's important that, that's not necessarily a binary. You are an alcoholic or you're not an alcoholic. There's always gray areas with lots of things in life. So, yeah, knowing that you don't have to classify yourself as a certain thing, but recognizing that it's a behavior that you're trying to, change potentially um, is important as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, I want to just go back to what you touched on earlier, where you said that, you had this desire to drink, 5 o'clock comes around and it's like this intensity of like, because you're so used to having a beverage at that point in time of your day. And then you noticed and you timed like that was like between 21 and 23 minutes. So what were some of the activities that you would busy yourself with during this time, and how did that help sort of overcome that, because maybe 5:30 comes around and it's like, oh well, I haven't had a drink. Did you find that
Yeah.
intensity came back, or was it just completely gone? Like, how did you manage that?
It just had lessened to a point where it wasn't a driving factor, because what was happening is that I'm not going to drink tonight, and then I'll get to 5 o'clock and just say, oh, I'll start tomorrow. I'll start my non-drinking tomorrow. I can't do it today.
Mm.
So I used the same wine glass that I used, and then I experimented with um, some non-alcoholic drinks. That one of the ones I really liked and was at the start of my non-drinking um, a drink called Adapt, and it has adaptogens in it, which really did make me feel more relaxed.
Mm.
It was a drink designed to kind of chill you out,
Yeah.
and and I really felt it. So, but I experimented with lots of different non-alcoholic drinks. So to kind of keep up that ritual,
Mm.
which was a trigger,
Yeah.
where now I don't even need that anymore.
Mm.
Um, you know, maybe we go to the pub, I'll get a non-alcoholic beer, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
really, I'm just yeah. It, so that was a big thing that I did to change, and then just being mindful, just you know, yeah, I didn't really tell people I was doing it. I wrote that blog well over a year later because
Yeah.
just in case I couldn't keep it up, so it's
Mm.
been a somewhat private um, journey to
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah.
I haven't made a I write blogs, and I've written those um, two blogs about it, and I do talk about it, but um, yeah, I didn't. I got really conscious of how many times I had a drink in my hand. So I started in the last 5 years or so years, like hiding my glass in photos. I
Mm.
didn't want every photo of me to have a glass of wine. I was usually holding one, but I just hid it.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thing, like it's just this little private thing to help me get through
Mm.
until I feel stronger on the
Yeah.
other side. And I definitely feel stronger on the other side now. I enjoy smelling wine, but
Mm.
I do believe that that if I had a drink tonight or today, that it would only be a matter of time before I'd be back drinking every night again.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Mm. Thanks for sharing that. So, were there any other, apart from like substituting? I think substituting is a great idea because it still gives you that satisfaction of having something special, and that's kind of that special treat. Like I did look up the drinks that you linked to in your blog post when you mentioned that you substituted, and they looked amazing. Like actually made by someone, like designed by someone in Melbourne, so it's a local person using native
Yeah,
ingredients as well, which is great. But were there any other techniques? Like, did you do some like deep breathing,
yeah.
or did you go for a walk, or like, were there any other sorts of interventions, for want of a better term, that you could put in place at that time of day?
Yeah, well, because I was also dealing with long COVID, I was looking at every aspect of my life, from my sleep to my stress to my exercise to my eating. So, not everyone is going to kind of go to such extremes, but my health dictated it. But for a lot of women who are going through perimenopause and menopause, I don't really have major menopausal symptoms. I'm 54, and I haven't menstruated since the 1st of January. So maybe I'm going to be postmenopause this year, or at the end of this year. Hopefully, I
Mm.
I am. But what I do know, I could feel with the perimenopausal symptoms is that where I didn't used to get hangovers, it was affecting me more, and the science backs that up as well. The
Mm.
drop in estrogen that we have affects our liver function. So our hangovers are worse. Or I hear this all the time, women saying to me, I used to be able to drink a glass of wine or a bottle of wine and wake up, and now I like have half a glass of wine, I've got the hangover from hell.
Mm.
And and the and the and the big thing for me is that alcohol affects my sleep, and
Mm.
sleep is the number one priority for managing life,
Yes.
menopause,
Yeah.
long COVID, getting stronger. managing when the wheels fall off the bus.
Yeah.
You know, sleep is number one. So what do I want? A drink or a good night's sleep? The drink is momentarily, the good night's sleep is long term. So you know, your question to me is what other things helped? And long-winded answer to tell you is that I really dive deep into the intellectual conversation around alcohol. I needed to justify to my thinking brain so I could deal with my emotional responses and my ritualistic responses or behavioral responses by putting in that you know, faux wine or, you know, a drink and all that. But I had to justify everything in my brain. So I spent a lot of time reading, and there's a couple of books that were really influential. And the biggest one was "Quit Like a Woman" by Holly. It's in my bookcase here. Holly Whitaker.
Yeah.
That was just really good. And then another one, which I just have forgotten right now, having a
It was,
menopausal moment.
you mentioned it in your blog post, so I can put the links to those books in the show notes if people want to find it.
Yeah. But it's the whole idea is that you understand that as a woman, you're being marketed to. The alcoholic uh, um, sellers have been on a mission to get women to drink as much as men. So those messages have come through that says, hey, you know, it's not just a boys thing. You can drink like the boys. You know, it's not the fairest sex and can't handle it. You totally can handle wine. You or whatever, you know, you can do this. And it's been this systematic marketing to get women to drink more really shits me, right? And so that annoyance that I have that some marketer wants to make more money by compromising my health is the intellectual response that I was able to have to back up those behavioral and, you know, responses symptoms. You can't, I don't know about other people, but I can't have one without the other. I've got to have that intellectual verification, and that came in the direct form of understanding that this has been a marketing ploy to get women to drink more, when the research is very, very clear. In fact, I was bringing up a paper, and I'm going to send this to you to link it to. It's just come out. And I was reading it before I jumped on this call. Literally, it's so fresh. And it's saying that, you know, what we thought was safe for women is not safe for women. You know, women can't metabolize alcohol as much. And yes, it makes us put on weight and all these other things, but the effect on our brain is huge.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if I take that back, like I have been worried about my drinking for decades, and I'm really health conscious. So every year on my birthday, I get my bloods done. I talk to my doctor, and it's all tickety boo, right? Like I've got, you know, no fatty liver, you know, I'm in the right weight category, blah, blah, blah. So I am healthy. And I would say to my doctor, do you think I'm drinking too much? I drink every night. I have a couple of glasses of wine. And they would say, don't change a thing. You're doing everything right. And that's actually not true. It's not right to have that long-term use of alcohol will affect my brain. But I have to say, I actually thought that I had a brain tumor. My headache symptoms were so bad when I had COVID. So I went to a neurologist and I had my brain scanned, and they did say to me that my brain is really healthy. So it was just like, right, well, I know it's healthy, so I'm not messing with it now.
Yeah, no, I do remember. I think that was when we were actually working together, was when you went through that COVID and started those long COVID systems. And I remember you being very, you wanting to find out as much as you could about your symptoms and how you could, you know, looking at all the different avenues. And I think yeah, I think some people, and not everyone necessarily, but has that desire to sort of to know the research or to understand the reasons why we should or shouldn't be doing things. I'm one of those people myself. I like to know the research, or at least explore something a bit more before I, take it on as, gospel. There's always, why is this important? How is it impacting me? How can, what's the benefits, etc. So, and I think that sometimes helps us rationalize, why we do something. If we don't understand it fully, it's kind of just accepting something in blind faith. And whilst that might be beneficial, it doesn't always satisfy the needs of your body, your mind, your physicality and everything. So yeah, doing the research helps us rationalize why we're doing something. And that's why I think it's so important to share this information and have this discussion today, because it's shedding some light on that. And I think especially as women, going through perimenopause and menopause, myself included, I'm only 40, I don't know, how old am I? 47, 48? I don't even know. Yeah. And I've been going through, sort of this period of, no periods for many months, and then it just randomly appears, and then it doesn't appear forever again. And yeah, and just noticing those changes taking place. And I know I hear women talk about, symptoms that they're having as a result. And I know that alcohol has an impact on, especially on our liver, like for women, like the liver, and men, of course, the liver metabolizes that alcohol, because alcohol is actually a poison. It's a poisonous substance that we're ingesting into our bodies, and the liver has to work hard. So as we age, of course, all our organs, of course, start to age as well, and loses that ability to metabolize the alcohol and the other things that we might be taking in. If we're drinking a lot of coffee, if if you're smoking, or if you're just eating foods that aren't healthy, we know what healthy is and what healthy isn't. Yeah, so the liver has a really rough job. And so, of course, taking alcohol out of that equation is going to help us to feel better and potentially reduce some of those symptoms. But I love what you said about,
Yeah.
it's also the effects on the brain. Like alcohol has a massive impact on our brain health. And especially as we get older, the chances of dementia and what have you increase, and all those other associated brain diseases, neurological conditions. So trying to avoid alcohol as much as possible to maintain a healthy brain is so important too.
Yeah, I think that there's been a real shift in it too. Like, certainly in my teens and 20s and even 30s, if someone said that they're a non-drinker or didn't drink, you thought, oh, they're a bit dodgy.
Yeah.
Maybe just my world.
No, and it was just like,
But oh, then
I remember that too, like people who didn't drink. I was like, oh, okay, what's wrong with them?
yeah, you're no fun. You're no fun.
Mm,
Um, and I like to think I'm just as much fun. I can be just as silly. It wasn't the alcohol making me silly. It was just me with the capability of being silly. So yeah, I'm claiming it. But yeah, it has really changed. I was in Europe last year, and it wasn't so good in France, but in Spain, there was non-alcoholic beer on tap at the tapas bars. So, there are just so many more options.
mm.
I'm not interested in a non-alcoholic wine. That just seems wrong.
It's just
I
grape juice,
just
isn't it?
figure I just figure that I have drunk enough wine in my life to
Mm,
already, so so it's
mm,
okay. But yeah, there are lots of non-alcoholic options now that are easily accessible.
mm.
Um, so it's not as difficult as what it once was, I think.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's many more options now in this day and age. So you've done the full 180 from drinker to non-drinker. What advice would you give other women who are in a similar situation to where you found yourself and are considering taking this non-alcohol path or non-drinking path?
Yeah, so um, maybe don't think about it as being you're never going to have another drink again, because that whole idea is too overwhelming, and you start to think of all the things where alcohol has been a really special part, and you have to go through all the firsts. And for me, one of the ones I still kind of miss it now is in the international airport lounge, they, having a glass of champagne it doesn't matter what time, because you're traveling. So
Yeah.
to me, that was one of the hardest ones. And then also going out with other people who you have long drinking histories with.
Mm.
So just by saying, I'm never going to drink again, all of those thoughts crowd into your head of like, oh, but what happens when I go and see my best friend Rachie and we go out, that's not going to work. Or my family stuff, that's not going to work. So you have to just think, I'm just going to have a look at today and see what I can do today, to not drink today. And it might be doing that thing where you time yourself from that time of when you have that craving or your habitual drink to when that eases, and then you put in some strategies around that. And definitely look at, there's lots of support. I feel like there's lots of things out there now around you're not an alcoholic, and it's much more nuanced, and there's lots more support out there that is nuanced as well, in terms of, grey area drinking is kind of a good catch, to start that look to find your tribe of, AA, for example, which is fairly extreme and doesn't resonate at all with me. It's not my thing at all. I have experienced it as someone who has. I've been with someone else who was a drug addict, and I went and supported them, so I know what happens in NA. But NA, AA, Narcotics Anonymous, there's Family Anonymous, there's Overeaters Anonymous, there's Alcoholic Anonymous.
Yeah,
it's just so not me. I would never give up. I wouldn't even start giving up if I had to go if that was my option. So might be good for you, but there's lots of other options out there.
Yeah.
Help and support.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, because I think a lot of people do get scared or shy about going the non-drinking path, because like you say, you've got long friends you've had for a long time that you kind of like drinking buddies with. You just sit around, have the long lunch, or go out and have a nice time with over dinner, or you go out drinking and dancing, whatever it is that you do. And so when you front up and say, I'm not drinking tonight, it's like, oh, well, why not? And there's sort of this uncomfortable feeling inside yourself that you have to share with this person why you're taking a break from drinking or whatever. And like you said, you did a lot of this sort of in private. You weren't really sort of telling people necessarily that you were going through this process. Do you have any advice for people then that might be sort of balking at that idea of I want to go out with my friend, but I don't want to drink? They're going to think I'm, weak or something, whatever. We make up stories in our head about what people are thinking about us. How would someone perhaps navigate that situation, do you think?
Well, you don't have to go and say, I'm not drinking ever again, because that just puts too much pressure on the whole situation. But just say, I'm not drinking tonight. And if you're perimenopause, or even if you're not, you can just say, I've got a really busy day tomorrow. When I drink, I have a terrible night's sleep and I can't cope, but, and just most of the time, it allows other women to, of course, I still get the questions from my good friends of like, are you still not drinking, Mish? And I go, yep, still not drinking. But, they are happy too, because they drink less when they're with me now. So they sleep better.
Yeah.
So, and
there's a flow on effect then.
it kind of works, and they know that their drinking isn't that healthy either. And so, when you're both doing it, obviously it's hard to put a break on it, but when you're not doing it, it enables them to not that I'm judging them or they have to stop, but they just don't drink as much, and they tell me, man, I don't drink nearly as much now that You've got to stop drinking. And of course, I turn it to say, well, you were always the main instigator, and I was just the, follower. And we have lots of laughs about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just take the pressure off. You don't have to say, you've given up for life or you've got a problem with alcohol. You can just say, I'm just not drinking tonight. It messes with my sleep, and I want to function tomorrow. And at the moment, I can't function. No one can
Yeah.
without good
Yeah.
sleep.
No, and I think that's a really gentle way of approaching it too. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for all the wisdom that you've shared with us today. I really appreciate you being here and being open about it all. We're going to wrap up now.
Yeah.
So first up, or before we wrap up, just before we do, we're in the Wellbeing Room, and we've just been talking a lot about well-being and alcohol and relating to that. But I have to ask you, what is one thing, apart from becoming a non-drinker, that has helped you improve your own well-being and helps you get more out of life?
Oh, I have a little saying. Actually, I presented this at a conference. I presented it in Auckland earlier this year, and it's be kick ass. And the ass is really ARS, and it stands for A, plan for adventure. Always be thinking of adventure. Now, this might be a different route of the walk that you take every day. Like it doesn't always have to be jumping out of a plane, but have adventure in your life. Life is for living, so adventure is number one. And the R stands for rest. Prioritize your sleep. Have a rest from digital, your digital screens. Have a rest from people who tire you. Whatever rest means for you. It doesn't have to be sleeping. It can be breathing. It can be walking in nature. Can be exercise, gentle exercise. You'll know what kind of rest you need. That's for you, but it's really important. And the S stands for schedule. So whatever you want to achieve in your life, you have to schedule it in. You have to, this is how I do it. At the end of each day, I turn off my computer, but before I do that, I have on my list what I'm going to achieve tomorrow. So my target is there. So I schedule it. I want to be better at something, then I have to schedule in a little bit of training every day to get better at that thing, whatever it is. So my advice to everyone out there is to be kick-ass. Adventure, rest, and schedule.
I love it. I love it. Yes. I can resonate with all those things. I think that's so important. Yeah. And that really covers 3 essential elements of life: adventure, rest, and schedule. Yeah, totally. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mish. It's been such a pleasure having you with us in the Wellbeing Room. I wish you all the best. And I look forward to staying in touch and maybe seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.